The University of Louisville football team faces a short week this week, having to face Duke on Thursday evening, 7:30 kickoff in Durham, North Carolina. We're going to talk to you about the key players you need to watch out for on both teams and also explaining why the Louisville Cardinals will cover the spread in this matchup against the Blue Devils. All that and more right here on the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back in to another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I want to take this time to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And just a reminder, the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. We are now doing a full dive into the preview against the Duke Blue Devils, 7:30 kickoff in Durham, North Carolina at Wallace Wade Stadium on Thursday evening for the Cards. The Louisville Cardinals looking to achieve bowl eligibility. We're going to start out identifying the two key players to watch for both Louisville and Duke in this matchup, one offensive, one defensive for both teams. And then we'll transition into why the Cards will cover the big 19.5 point spread in that matchup. Before we get into the content of today's show, like I mentioned, my name is Dalton Pence. For those who are not aware of who I am, I do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports, and I'm also a credentialed media member through Cardinals Sports Zone, where I serve as a football beat writer and a recruiting analyst. You can follow my Twitter handle and the graphic below, or you can follow the podcast Twitter page at LO_Louisville. But let's get right on into the show. The Louisville Cardinals entering this game at 5-5. They will need to really come out in this game with a vengeance and put Duke away early. The Blue Devils have struggled in the ACC. We'll talk about in the final segment of the show. But there's a couple players who played really well last week that I think could carry that momentum over in this matchup on Thursday evening. Beginning on the offensive side of things, I think it's co-rookie of the week is what Ahmari Huggins-Bruce got in terms of awards after his performance against Syracuse. But I'm going with the true freshman in this matchup. Had his best game to date for the Cardinals last weekend. 6 receptions, 54 yards, 2 touchdowns receiving. I think that, the ability to get him the ball in space really bodes well for what he can do. He's very explosive, very twitchy, makes guys miss. He said it post-game. Scott Satterfield said it in his Monday press conference. Hey, look, Ahmari Huggins-Bruce is one of those guys. He's not the biggest guy out there, but I think that bodes well to his advantage and helps him to make plays with his speed and his agility and quickness. So I think that this is a great opportunity for the Cards. The Duke Blue Devils have the second worst passing defense in the country. They are not doing well on that side of the ball at all, let alone the defense in general. But I think that Ahmari Huggins-Bruce is the player to focus on here for the Louisville Cardinals, just because it seems like, having watched Duke a couple times, admittedly I'm not too in the know when it comes to what they do and what they don't do. I'm not a coach or anything like that, but when I have watched them, it looks like, they have trouble in terms of, in coverage, staying with faster receivers, and completing tackles. Missed tackles is a big issue for the Duke defense. So I think for a player like Ahmari Huggins-Bruce, which the Louisville coaching staff and the offense in general has identified as one of the guys that, hey, we need to get this guy the ball out in space, let him try to make some stuff happen. And look what happened against Syracuse. That came to fruition. 6 receptions, 2 touchdowns he turned in. So I think that there could be a lot of benefactors from a bad passing defense that the Cards are going up against this week. You could talk about Jordan Watkins could have a big week, Marshawn Ford, Justin Marshall, Tyler Harrell. The list goes on. I think that that's the beauty of it, and it's so hard to predict just because the Louisville passing regime is very balanced in terms of skill players at the wideout position. So, but I think that, Ahmari Huggins-Bruce is a player. He probably is the twitchiest player, in the wide receiving room. I think that he has the most explosiveness, despite Tyler Harrell leading the nation in yards per reception. I think that in terms of pure explosiveness and pure making guys miss. I think Ahmari Huggins-Bruce is the guy to go to in that situation. So I look for him to have a big game in this one against Duke. Whether that be, I could definitely see a 3 or 4 receptions for over 100 yards and a touchdown or a pair of touchdowns, trying to hit him on the home run play. But there could be a lot of other guys that get involved as well. So, but I think Ahmari Huggins-Bruce carrying that momentum over from the game against Syracuse is the player that we look at here. Another player to look at that had a very, very solid game against the Qs last week was Yasir Abdullah. Led the team with 9 tackles, 7 of them being solo. 2 sacks, 2.5 tackles per loss. I feel like we bring Yasir's name up a lot when it comes to players to watch for. And I get it can get a little redundant, but I don't mean it to be in a lazy sense. I'm just saying that, this week they're going up against Mataeo Durant, who is the number 10 in the nation in rushing yards. So the Duke rushing attack is where they like to make their money. I think that Yasir Abdullah is one of the best defenders on the team in general. In fact, he is the best defender on the team with Monty Montgomery out. But he's such a crucial part in the rushing game, but also, being able to get after the quarterback as well makes a lot of things happen in the opposing defensive backfield with more clarification. So you could go a lot of different ways here. I think CJ Avery could be a 2-time key player to watch, back-to-back weeks. Dorian Jones, who has been playing well, he could be another guy. I'm trying to go away from the secondary for this respective matchup just because I think that Duke is a team that struggles throwing the ball, and it doesn't help that the fact that Scott Satterfield mentioned on Monday that they don't even know who the quarterback is going to be in this matchup because their regular starter had gotten hurt. They played 2 freshmen last week and kind of had a little bit of a revolving door. So at the end of the day, most of the Louisville defensive focus is going to be on the Blue Devils rushing attack on the ground. And thankfully for the Cards, they have been very, very solid against the run this season, most recently having a good performance against one of the best rushing attacks in the country in the Syracuse Orange, holding them to under 150 yards. So I think it's going to be more the same for the Cards in this matchup, but I think a guy like Yasir Abdullah, who players look to, to provide leadership both on and off the field, he's turning in a very, very solid season. Turning into one of the best pass rushers that Louisville has had in the past, 5-10 years or so. Very, very under the radar type player that is turning in a very impressive set of performances in this season. I'm going Yasir Abdullah here. You could also go defensive line, Yaya Diaby, Ashton Gelati, and even the guys, Malik Clark, Des Tell, Jacques Turner. But for me, in terms of, pure not necessarily consistency, but pure production, I should say, I think that Yasir Abdullah is going to potentially lead the Cards in tackles again in this matchup, and the key will be getting the Duke offense off the field and just letting your offense feast. So Yasir Abdullah takes this title for me in this week, along with Ahmari Huggins-Bruce on the offensive side of things. The good thing about this week is that, there's a lot of players that come into factor for this key player to watch, recognition, and that's a good thing because I can see, a handful of players having some big respective weeks individually against the Duke Blue Devils. But with that being said, let's transition over into the opposition, focusing on 2 players to watch for on the Duke side of things. That is Mataeo Durant, the running back that we mentioned, number 10 in the nation in rushing yards, along with linebacker Shaka Heyward, who is leading the team in tackles. We'll talk about both of those players after we talk about our friends at PrizePicks. If you are a college sports fanatic, PrizePicks is something that you need to focus on. It's daily fantasy made easy, and it's a leader in college sports daily fantasy, offering more college football props than anyone in the world, while offering all the star players of the Power 5 as well as mid-major players you might not have ever heard of. PrizePicks offers any prop you can think of, from yardage to touchdowns, even interceptions thrown. All of those that deposit and use the promo code LOCKEDON will get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So here's how it works. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projections, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. And it's literally just you versus the projected numbers. But here's what I like the most is the fact that it allows mixed sports entries, so you can take the over on D'Angelo Russell and combine that with the under on Carson Wentz in the same entry. And, it's easy. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. You can check that out on the App Store or Google Play. It's an award-winning app. It's safe, offers fast withdrawals. So don't hesitate. Check out prizepicks.com and use the promo code LOCKEDON, or go to your App Store today and download the app. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. So we are now focusing on the Duke side of things, the key players to watch. It all starts with the focal point on offense of Mataeo Durant, the big-time senior running back. And he's kind of really the only bright spot in this offense when you look at what they're doing respectively. In that sense, Durant has 1,095 yards on the season, 9 touchdowns to his name, 5 yards per carry over with 220 attempts. So I think that, with the quarterback situation kind of being fluid and up in the air and not necessarily determined yet, with it being a short week, you kind of have to go with things on the fly, even if you don't necessarily feel comfortable with it in the quarterback room. So I would assume that the Blue Devils are probably looking to, go heavily and lean heavily on Durant to try to get this offense going and hope to be able to get through the hole and get through the offensive holes and make some big plays and get some big time scores. So it's an uphill battle for the Blue Devils in this one. But Durant, I get that the Cards are doing extremely well against the opposing team's rushing attack, but this is just another big test for the team. Durant, like Sean Tucker, has made the most out of his opportunities. It's a little bit of a different situation because he is a veteran, a senior leader. When I watch him play, he's got a lot of ability to make things happen between the tackles. He's just a guy that he's a big running back, 6'1", 195, and that's pretty large for a running back. A good north-south runner. When you get him into east-west situations, I think that's kind of where he struggles. Reminds me of Jalen Mitchell in a sense. Very strong, sort of a power back, and really can absorb that first initial hit by the defense and turn that into yards after contact type situation. So for Louisville, it's a matter of wrapping him up quickly and getting to him in the backfield so he doesn't so you don't allow him to get ahead of steam and be able to go downhill with some speed. So ultimately, I think that Durant is the no-brainer here on offense. It's just the fact that Duke struggles throwing the ball offensively. I mean, they are one of the bottom 50 teams when it comes to scoring the football. So you have to force Duke into third and long situations. But it seems like you should be able to know that Duke is going to try to run this ball down Louisville's throat, and they're going to get Mataeo Durant some. He's gonna have a big workload against Virginia Tech this last weekend. Didn't necessarily have his best game, probably his worst game to date. 10 carries for 33 yards. The Hokies really shut him down last weekend. But against Pittsburgh, 24 carries, 89 yards. Against Wake Forest, 20 carries, 103 yards. So overall, he's kind of a volume ball carrier. He might not necessarily average. Like I said, his season average is 5 yards per carry. But in the past 2 matchups, he's rushed for under 4 yards per carry. So that's something to watch for. I think that bodes well for the opposing defenses, because when you can kind of game plan for a team being one-dimensional, it definitely helps. But last week against the Virginia Tech Hokies, the Duke Blue Devils ran a couple different quarterbacks there. One of them being in the second half in Moore. I think it's Jordan Moore, the freshman quarterback, 6'2", 180 pounds from Sykesville, Maryland. Rushed for over 100 yards, 113 on the ground to be exact, 1 touchdown in that game. So he could be another player to focus on if he gets the starting nod against the Louisville Cardinals. But definitely Mataeo Durant, the focal point for that Duke Blue Devil offense. I say that 3 times fast. But shifting over to the defensive side of things, Shaka Heyward is the player to watch for the Duke Blue Devils on the defense. Junior leader, 6'4", 220 pounds, Georgia native. Leads the team with 78 tackles on the year. Only 29 of those are solo tackles. That's something that could be an interesting tidbit. The fact that I think Duke is sort of a by committee when it comes to the linebacking core. He does have 3 sacks on the season, 1 interception for 26 yards. So let's face it, the Duke defense is one of the worst in the country statistically, and they really, really struggle in all facets of the game. And this is going to be a player to where Shaka Heyward has his work cut out for him against one of the better offensives that he will see this season. And it's going to be interesting to see if they can get him going early and bring him after the quarterback. He only has 3 sacks, but does lead the team in tackles. So the Cards didn't rush for over 200 yards for the 6th straight game against Syracuse, but the Louisville rushing attack still is very potent. And it's going to be a lot of focus on that linebacking core for the Blue Devils to see not only how they can stop the running back committee, but also the big elephant in the room, and that is stopping Malik Cunningham. Not many teams at all have been able to do that this year. So, Heyward, like I mentioned, has his work cut out for him. Not only is he going to have to focus on what the Cards can do on the ground, but also in the air. Louisville looked really sharp in the passing game last week. Malik Cunningham had a quarterback rating of, I believe, over 100. If not, he was right there, and had 4 touchdowns in the air. So you have to focus on all levels of the game, all aspects of the offense as a whole. And I'm just not necessarily comfortable saying that Duke's going to be able to do that. And when we talk about what they have done in the ACC slate this season in the upcoming segment, it'll be very obvious, very evident that, this is a team that has been playing really bad football and has been struggling. They do play marginally better at home, as Scott Satterfield alluded to in his Monday press conference, but still, it can only do so much. I think that overall, Mataeo Durant is the guy to look for on offense. Shaka Heyward, the guy to look for on the defensive side of things. But I don't necessarily feel comfortable with that, with the Heyward recognition. Not necessarily because he's not a good player, just because I think that this Louisville offense is really going to have its way against the Duke Blue Devil defense. So transitioning over into the Louisville Cardinals are a 19.5-point favorite against the Duke Blue Devils on Thursday evening. I'm going to tell you exactly why the Cards are going to cover that spread right after we talk about our friends at NetSuite. So imagine this. This is it, the putt to win the tournament. If you sink it, the championship is yours. But on your backswing, your hat falls over your eyes. Is this how you're running your business? Poor visibility because you're still relying on spreadsheets and outdated finance software? To see the full picture, you need to upgrade to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system to power your growth with visibility and control of your financials, inventory, HR, planning, budgeting, and more. NetSuite is everything you need to grow all in one place. With NetSuite, you can automate your processes and close your books in no time while staying ahead of your competition. And 93% of surveyed businesses increase their visibility and control after upgrading. Over 27,000 businesses already use NetSuite, and right now, through the end of the year, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind financing program to those ready to upgrade at netsuite.com/lockedonncaa. Once again, head to netsuite.com/lockedonncaa for special end-of-year financing on the #1 financial system for growing businesses. Once again, that is netsuite.com/lockedonncaa. So, as I mentioned, the Cardinals are a 19.5-point favorite over the Duke Blue Devils on Thursday evening, courtesy of our friends at Bet Online for those numbers. And I got to be honest, anytime a team is favored by over 18 points, or I guess you could say 2 scores, it makes it a little challenging to really bet the spread, just because everything has to go well, and all it takes is one good performance from the opposition, and you're really in a tough situation. But the 2 rules that I have that kind of serve as exceptions is if a top 25 team is playing in mid-major, I could see making exception, or a respectable team is playing an opposing team that has just been struggling a ton, and the the point differential is just off the charts. Unfortunately, that brings the 2018 Louisville Cardinal team into mind in terms of a lot of people bet against them that year because of, their bad point differential. And looking what Duke has done on the season, they are 3-7. I'm not sure if it's official yet, but there has been rumblings that David Cutcliffe, the longtime Duke head coach, is possibly retiring after this season, so that could serve as a distraction. But overall, the Blue Devils lost to Charlotte to start the year, then won their 3 games, won 3 straight against North Carolina A&T, beat Northwestern by 7, and then beat Kansas. But after that, it has been a very tough go for the Duke Blue Devils. They are 0-6 in the conference. The only close game has been a 31-27 loss against the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets back on October 9th. They lost 38-7 against North Carolina, lost 48-0 against Virginia, lost by 38 to Wake Forest, lost by, I think it's 25 to Pittsburgh, and then lost by 31 to Virginia Tech. So this has been a team that has been giving up gaudy numbers to the opposition. Like I mentioned, this is one of the worst defensive teams in the country, definitely the worst defensive team in the Power 5. I think the only team that they trail in terms of total defense is, I want to say it's Arkansas State. But the Duke Blue Devils are allowing just under 500 yards of offense to opposing teams, which is, it's tough. I mean, that is very, very, not encouraging, I should say, discouraging, if you will. Duke on the season, 97th in points per game, 24.2 that they are scoring per contest. Opposing-wise, they are bottom 10 in the country in scoring defense, allowing 36.8 points per game. I think that this is just, an overall combination of a couple different things. Number one, yes, the Duke defense has been struggling, tenfold. But on top of that, you have to give the credit for Louisville playing well, on top of that. After the win against Syracuse, you're able to carry that momentum over into the short week. The Cards are healthy outside of linebacker Cam Wilson, who it's likely that he's probably out, might have played if it would have been a Saturday game, but it seems like he's a game-time decision. But regardless, no very big-time injuries. The Cards continuing to click on offense. They just had their best performance overall last week against Syracuse. Malik Cunningham is really going to make life difficult for the Duke Blue Devils, who don't do a great job of stopping the pass. So I think that they're going to get the game going through the air very quickly, and then you obviously have to stop what Louisville does best, and that's run the football. And it's just a tall task for a Duke Blue Devils team that is, continually going in the wrong direction. Louisville has bowl eligibility on the line. Scott Satterfield and company said, hey, it's not one of those things that we don't talk about. I mean, we're being honest with ourselves. We know that bowl eligibility was the goal before the season, and they have a very good opportunity to do so here in a couple days against Duke. So I think that this is just going to be a perfect storm for the Cards. Yes, 19.5 points is a big spread, but I think Louisville wins this by about 24 to 28 points. So ultimately it's going to be, a testament to a couple things. The Louisville offense gets going. The Louisville defense, I think, is going to hold Duke to under 14 points. The Cardinals have been very solid defensively over the past couple weeks. If they're able to turn in, an overall good performance like they did against Syracuse and for the most part against Clemson and Boston College, I think that there should be no issue of Louisville not only winning this game, but also at the end getting, over the hump in terms of the spread and covering the 19.5 point in favor of the Cardinals. So we began our preview into the Duke Blue Devils, talking about the key players to watch for both teams and explaining why Louisville will cover the spread. I know this was supposed to be a Wyoming Wednesday. That's on me. That was a scheduling conflict, on my end. So we'll have Jeremy on to go into the final tune-up in terms of preview for the Duke Blue Devils. That episode airing tomorrow morning. Be able to check that out. Also, Speaking of Jeremy Wallman, be sure to go check out the Cardinal Sports Zone podcast, the most recent one dropping on Sunday evening. Some great recap of what happened this past weekend, recap of the Syracuse win, along with previewing the Duke the Duke matchup. So check that out at cardinalsportszone.com. Also want to give a quick shout out to the Locked On Bets podcast hosted by your boy Q with handicapping and analysis expert Lee Sterling. You can check that out on the Odyssey app or wherever you like to get your podcast. That's going to wrap up this Wednesday edition of the show. Everyone have a great